Hello, my name is Wesley Matson, and for my final project, I analyzed the sentiment and skepticism of tweets referencing global warming. Climate change is becoming an increasingly polarizing and political topic. There's no doubt that in recent years, the temperatures have been slowly increasing and the rate of the increase is also increasing, which is alarming to a lot of people. The scientific community is unified in the belief that these changes are due to man-made effects, where others are skeptical. If human behavior is to blame, the time to act is now, and there's a lot of momentum from some people to see this as a political issue. The purpose of this project is to try to get an idea to see by analyzing Twitter data if this is going to be a bigger political issue than in previous years. We gathered data from April 2011, April 2015, and April 2019 this year on any tweets mentioning climate change or global warming. Of those tweets, we use the Vader sentiment Python package to analyze the tweets as positive, negative, or neutral. Vader sentiment is a very useful package for analyzing social media data because it takes into account capitalization and punctuation and other items except including words. Another way we can analyze this is by analyzing the tweets as skeptical or not skeptical. In order to do this, any type of clustering isn't necessarily going to cluster it into those two types because the difference between them can be very subtle. So one way to approach this is to manually label a small sample of tweets as skeptical or not skeptical, and then we can use that to train a clustering algorithm to go ahead and label the rest of the data set. For the current time period, we gathered 350,000 tweets, so to be able to go and manually label all of those is not going to be a realistic option. What we did do is label 400 and use those to train and label the rest. From this analysis, we can see if there are any potential shifts in sentiment or skepticism over the previous 8 years. Here's the results of the sentiment analysis. We can see that the proportion of tweets in each of the 4-year periods is pretty consistent. The one big change that we can see, or small change, is there's a slightly decrease in negative tweets in 2020 with a slight increase in neutral tweets. The positive tweets are going to be or pretty consistent. We used the naive Bayes clustering algorithm to label the tweets as skeptical or not skeptical. Here we can see the confusion matrix where the top row is the true labels that were labeled skeptical. We can see that 20 were labeled skeptical correctly, while 7 were labeled skeptical incorrectly. We can also see that the bottom row is the tweets that were not skeptical, and 2 were labeled not skeptical incorrectly, while 91 were labeled correctly. So we can see that the main accuracy of this algorithm comes from labeling not skeptical tweets correctly. The labels that were skeptical are not as accurate as we would like. From this analysis, we can then go and look at the proportion of skeptical tweets in each year, and we can see that the current year has a significantly higher proportion of skeptical tweets compared to the last 2 years. This 2 and 4% is going to be within the margin of error of this type of labeling and using the algorithm. But here we can clearly see a strong jump from 2 and 4% up to 13%. So that's a clear shift in skeptical. We also looked for any connection between skepticism and sentiment. And with this violin plot, we can clearly see that there's the distribution of tweets is different between labeled 0 as skeptical. We can see that there's 3 clear groups here. A group that's positive, a group that's pretty neutral, and a group here at the down at the negative, which is pretty negative. Okay, this used the decimal version of the score. For the not skeptical tweets, we can see that we have some spikes, a big spike here at neutral and a smaller spike at slightly positive, but other than that, the tweets are more uniformly distributed on the positive and negative ends. We can also break down the positive and negative tweets in terms of proportion, and we can see that both skeptical and not skeptical had slightly over 30% negative, and the difference comes in the neutral labeling, which not skeptical had a higher proportion. From this, we can clearly see from the large spike around 0, and the skeptical tweets had a higher proportion as positive based on that. So the overall conclusion from this analysis is that while the skepticism has increased over the past 8 years, the sentiment is pretty much unchanged. And here we have a graph that shows the volume of ice in Greenland over the last 20 years, and we can see that it's clearly decreasing by 286 gigatons per year. So with that increase of skepticism, maybe we'll see an increase in polarization between voters who are passionate about it and want to see change. Maybe they won't accept a candidate to stand pat, and also the people who are skeptical, they're going to again not allow the politicians to push on the topic this year. So maybe with this spike in skepticism, that might lead us to some change. So we will see how it goes. Thank you for listening.